Tow Truck Frank, stories from my life. Tow Truck Frank, stories from my life. Hello you all, I'm Diana Brienne. Well, you all know I love to tell little stories from my life, and I do that quite often. And so I never know what I'm going to talk about, and usually it's inspiration and motivation, and yet I like to share stories from my life. Well, as you all know, I'm 62 years old, so I have a lot of stories to tell. Well, this story goes back to when I was about 19. And I had just moved from a small southern-like town to California, to a beach community. And I had begun to go to college. And, well, I had already been in college, but I had transferred out to California. And so I was living in the apartment by myself, and because my mother, she would come back and forth, and she would stay, for a while, and then she'd leave again. And so often I was there by myself, and it was really my apartment. And so I was living on my own at 19 years old, and I had this little blue banged up 1971 Mazda. Now this Mazda did not have air conditioning, and the radio was broken, and it was kind of banged up, and it was red when I bought it. So I took it to the local paint shop that painted cars for $25. Yes, $25. And you can only imagine what that paint was like. Well, they painted it blue, but the red would show through. So I drove this car from while I was going to college, while I was going to school. And it got me to and from, and the bumper was kind of bent in a little bit. It did not look all that good. And so anyhow, one day I got a flat tire. And so I had to call the tow truck driver, the tow truck company, to come fix my tire because I didn't know how to do it. And there was no one really around to help me. I didn't really know anyone to just go up to them and ask, and I didn't feel real comfortable doing that. So I had the tow truck driver come out, and he, repaired my tire, and he really, really, really liked me. And I remember his name was Frank, so I always called him Tow Truck Frank. But anyhow, he kind of asked me out, and I said, no, thank you. I'm real busy right now. And so then that night I had studied, I'd stayed up really late, and then I went to bed. And about an hour after I went to bed, I was pretty close to falling completely asleep when I heard somebody out at my window. Now I lived on a second level, okay, and there was a long balcony there, but we often left our windows with a screen open at night because we didn't have air conditioning. Back then, that apartment didn't have air conditioning. Now it would be almost unheard of to not have central air, but it didn't back then. And people felt pretty comfortable leaving their windows open. So I had left my window open. And so I ran out to the kitchen in my nightgown, and there's this leg coming through into the kitchen. So I grabbed the broom and I started whacking the leg and whoever was on the other side. I just started whacking. And so they went back out, and I slammed the window shut and stuck something in there, like I think a fork or a knife, to jam it so that they couldn't open it back up. Then I hear a knock at the door, and I said, who is it? And they said, it's Tow Truck Frank. It was the tow truck driver that tried to climb into my apartment. He said, all I wanted to do was ask you out for a date. I said, no, thank you. Please go away. I'm sleeping. And after about 15, 20 minutes, he went away. And I think he was kind of pretty harmless, but he wasn't real bright. And so I think he came back once or twice, and I just never opened the door, and then he gave up. But yeah, that was, Tow Truck Frank, my experience with the tow truck driver. And that's not my only experience with a tow truck driver. I was living in Palm Springs, California, and I was driving back and forth to LA. I had a wonderful job in LA, and I was working as a nurse and kind of like in a VIP type of setting. And so I would drive back and forth, and I was young. And so my girlfriend and I were driving into LA from Palm Springs. It was very, very hot. It was like really hot that day. And I had a brand new car at that point. And I believe it was my car that overheated and we had to pull alongside the road. Well, we didn't have cell phones back then. There was no cell phones. So this semi-truck driver stopped. He picked us up. We climbed up into the bed of the truck, got into this big semi, and he drove us to that dinosaur inn, that dinosaur where all the, kind of pretend dinosaurs, they're giant, at a cafe, and he dropped us off. Well, I called a friend to come get us, and he said, well, you're going to have the car towed back. And so I had to wait for a tow truck driver. So I get a tow truck driver that comes and picks us up and to go get the car. So he picks us up. While we are in the truck with him to go get my car, all of a sudden the police and the sirens are chasing the tow truck with us in it. I mean, and this guy did not pull over. He just kept on going. Finally, somehow they blocked him in and he got out and they arrested him. So now we are in the back of a police car being taken back to the dinosaur cafe, as I call it. And finally, my friend came and got us. Well, the tow truck company later called me and apologized and everything like that. And I have no idea why they arrested this guy. But I didn't have really great experiences at that point with tow truck drivers. No offense to tow truck drivers. I'm sure there are wonderful ones out there. But it was just at that time period of my life and tow truck drivers didn't seem to mix right. So anyhow, I got my car towed back and it got all fixed and I got into LA and went to work and, and back then I was driving 2 hours to LA and 2 hours back. So it was a pretty long drive and, but it was well worth it to do so. And anyhow, story from my life, from my house to yours. Please subscribe and I hope to talk to you all soon. From my house to yours, God bless. Talk to you then. Bye.